Hello YouTube. This video will give you some more background to my ongoing research that I have shared with you about the Ural Mountains mysteries, paranormal sites, cryptids and vanished races in general, and the Dyatlov Pass tragedy in particular. Let me repeat that I do not believe that the Dyatlov hikers were murdered by Mansi tribesmen back in 1959. Today I want to tell you more about the Mansi people, as well as the creatures they fear very much. Creatures that reportedly dwell in the thick forests and mountains of the Urals. I looked through the reports from various Russian researchers and also my own research that spans decades. The Mansi people, small in number, ethnicity, were called Vaguls in the past, wild forest people. Their place of life was the mountain and forest Urals and the most remote areas beyond the Urals. The existence of these people depended entirely on the taiga, which is boreal forest, and its wildlife. Their spiritual life and religious beliefs were also formed in communication with wild, harsh nature. Hidden in caves, away from the prying eyes, sacred temples have had a special status since ancient times, and only a selected few knew where the altar was hidden in the dark, winding corridors of the dungeons where animals were sacrificed and offerings were left to the gods. There was an altar, wooden idols, totem images in the caves, and not the most valuable but rather rare things in everyday life. For example, scraps of clothing and coins given as offerings. Cave sanctuaries are quite widely represented in the Mansi culture. Almost every cave at the mouth of the river was somehow connected with religious rituals. Until the 20th century, despite attempts to integrate Mansi deeply into Soviet public life, the northern people managed to preserve the desired religious customs for a long time, some of which have not lost relevance to this day. In the 1930s, Valery Nikolaevich Chernetsov, a researcher of the Ural North, Soviet ethnographer and archaeologist, recorded an interesting observation about the special status of the cave sanctuary, Ushmin Cave, located on the right bank of the Lozva River, near the mouth of the Ushma River. It turned out that the cave had been used as a pagan temple for several centuries. Literally in several layers, a huge number of bear skulls and bones of other animals were piled on the floor of one of the underground holes. The Mansi people treated this cave in a special way, according to the Russian archaeologist. Chernetsov left an entry in his writings. When the Mansi swim past the cave on the Lozva, the women get out of the boat and walk along the opposite shore, and the men sailing past avoid looking at the cave. The interior of the sacred caves and even the surrounding river banks remain forbidden territories for women for a long time. The story about the persecution of a group of geologists by Mansi shamans was published in V.A. Maltsev's book Expedition Diaries, from letters of Vladimir Lvovich Valdaysky to Viktor Maltsev, March 1979. The essence of the story is as follows. In the 1930s, a geological party worked in the area of the northern Urals, on the side from the Denishkin Kamen mountain to the upper reaches of the Vishera River. Returning home along the slope of the Molebny Kamen mountain, Praying Stone Mountain in English, the group accidentally stumbled upon the Mansi sanctuary. The geologists claimed that they were aware that they should not ruin the temple, but for the sake of curiosity, they decided to inspect the altar. In a small fenced area, there were several wooden idols, horns, dishes, coils of rags, coins, and other belongings. A few minutes after the geologist approached the temple, a group of Mansi appeared at the ready with hunting rifles, 3 young and 1 old man. Apparently, they were following the trail of geologists and overtook the strangers at the sanctuary. The geologists decided not to enter into a dialogue with the indigenous people and hurried on their way. They organized an overnight stay on the banks of the Toshemka River, put rafts and the boat on the water in order to go to Vizhai the next day. In the morning, the Mansi armed group reappeared in the camp. The old man ordered everyone to sit and not move, otherwise they would shoot. Then he began to measure the soles of his of the boots with a string. After measuring the boots of geologists and not finding the right shoe size, the old man demanded to show another one, to which the geologist began to convince him that there was no one else in the camp. The old man briefly examined the tent but did not notice the hidden geologist hiding under the pile of things. The pursuers thought that the owner of the desired size of boots had left the camp and remained waiting for his return. The geologists waited a long time. It was not only at nightfall that the head of the party managed to get out unnoticed, untie the boat, and escape to Vizhai, from where he rushed off to Ivdel without stopping. And these names should be familiar to you, but you can look at my videos about the Dyatlov Pass disaster or tragedy. I have a special playlist, so you will know the name of Ivdel and others. Anyway, as it turned out later, he decided to take a certain silver cup from the sanctuary as a souvenir. If he had been caught by Mansi, it is not known how this story would have ended. In the newspaper Severnaya Zvezda, dated May 25, 1955, the Russian researcher from Tainstvenny Ural group managed to find an amazing story about how in 1953 a geologist named Yakhantov, while in one of the Mansi villages, exchanged a field bag with geodetic equipment and the diary of a missing surveyor Yemelyanov. He disappeared several years before. He exchanged it from a local resident. In his notes, Yemelyanov described the legend of a bronze bear statue hidden in one of the caves, which was allegedly presented to a local shaman by Yermak's associate, Ataman, or chieftain Ivan Koltsov. Yermak led Russian conquistadors to conquer Siberia. Just to be brief, you can find out more about him in my other videos. Anyway, according to legend, the Cossacks were heading to Moscow with a petition to the Russian Tsar or King Ivan the Terrible about the advance of the Yermak's army in the possessions of the Siberian Khans, rulers. As rich gifts to the Tsar, they brought trophies, valuable trophies from the captured horde, meaning golden horde, settlements, including a statue of a bronze bear decorating with precious stones. Han Kuchum ordered to intercept the Cossack detachment, but the pursuit was not successful. The cunning chieftain decided to resort to the help of local people and hide from the possible pursuers by secret trails crossing the mountains, using those secret Vagul trails. The Vagul, as the Mansi were called at that time, shaman, acted as a guide. As a sign of gratitude for saving the lives of Cossacks, petitioners, and valuable cargo, Ivan Koltsov presented the shaman with the very statue of the bronze bear. The shaman accepted this rich gift and hid the idol in one of the sacred caves. Yemelyanov heard the story of the idol hidden in the cave from one of the young Mansi. Intrigued by the amazing story, so the surveyor decided to try his luck in the search, especially since, by nature of his official duties, he constantly explored the surroundings. With questions about the essence of the local legend, he turned to shaman Nikita Yakovlevich Bakhtiaryov. The shaman was extremely dissatisfied with such interest on the part of an outsider and advised to abandon the idea of searching for the bronze idol. According to the diary entries, Yemelyanov noted that the undisguised malice on the part of the previously good-natured Mansi. When examining one of the small and inconspicuous rock caves located on the banks of the Toshemeki River, the surveyor did find the coveted cachet. The article describes the find as follows. The huge figure of a bear, standing on its hind legs, as tall as a man, was cast in bronze in the light of the flare. The bear's eyes glowed with huge red rubies. Its tongue was made of a piece of pink tourmaline, and its teeth were made of polished purple amethysts. The bronze predator was executed so skillfully that every muscle was visible, every hair was cast on the mighty metal skin. However, besides the bear, there were other finds in the cave. Rifles were placed along the walls, boxes of ammunition were on the floor, and a Maxim machine gun was hidden in the farthest corner. The description of the find was the last entry in the diary. Where Mansi got the bag of the missing surveyor, Yakhantov could not establish, however, as well as the further fate of the find. The article reflects that the reason for the loss of the treasure hunter could have been the death at the hands of the shaman Bakhtiar, who guarded the sacred cave with that bronze bear and weapons inherited from the Russian Civil War. Of course, the story of the surveyor Yemelyanov and the bronze bear is most likely a literary fiction. Numerous attempts to find the roots of the legend of the golden or bronze bear have not led to any ethnographic source. Mention of the story was found only in the newspaper article mentioned earlier and in 1967 work of fiction, The Tale of Yermak. The author was Molozhavenko. However, the very fact of Ataman Ivan Koltso crossing the Ural Mountains with a letter of petition from Yermak straight to Ivan the Terrible took place. It is possible that an adventure story about the missing surveyor, the statue of the bronze bear, and the Mansi cave was composed on the basis of real historical events. It would seem that such a conclusion fits quite logically into the context of the events present. However, in this story, a very interesting and extremely unexpected fact attracted Ural researchers' attention. They accidentally found out that the same shaman from the article Severnaya Zvezda newspaper, Bakhtiarov Nikita Yakovlevich, in 1939 was prosecuted for the practice of shamanism, as well as anti-Soviet activities and illegal possession of weapons. The communists destroyed many shamans. It was a whole warfare. We'll get to it one someday. A very, very sad story. Anyway, whether the criminal prosecution is connected with the story of the Mansi treasure is too early to draw conclusions. More archival research is needed, but who knows when it will be done. Remember also, we are describing the legendary, mysterious, robotic, and powerful ancient golden woman who reportedly resides in the same territories. But what I'm just trying to tell you is that it's easy to jump to conclusions. But the Mansi people, they're small but very complicated and interesting culture. Ethnographers who study the history, way of life, and customs of the Mansi encounter the most interesting Mansi folklore, numerous myths, legends, tales, and songs. They reflect the true episodes of Mansi's life, their most cherished thoughts and dreams, worldview, economic concerns, social injustice, and because this is from the Soviet times, they described the struggle of the poor against the rich. But it was much more complicated than just pure economy. But folklore has thus become a rich source for recreating the life history of the Mansi tribes. It also sheds light on customs and traditions of modern Mansi. Mansi, they have many legends and myths about the origin of the earth, the sun, the moon, the stars, and the people. The heroes of these tales are most often gods and spirits. According to the ancient Mansi, the forest, mountains, rivers, lakes are inhabited by numerous spirits with supernatural powers. People believe that success in work, hunting, and fishing depended on these spirits. Animals also figure in Mansi myths, and first of all, the bear. This beast has long been surrounded by an aura of reverence. People were in awe of him, afraid of him, but they were always hunting for him. Mansi hunters living in the forest still keep the custom. They kill the bear, then they walk, celebrate, and invite guests from all over the neighborhood. Many people are interested in visiting the ancient holiday on the occasion of a successful bear hunt. Let's leave it at that. But the Mansi folklore is most fascinating, and I'm sure we don't know everything about the legends, even about the bear in that cave that I told you about. But maybe, who knows, maybe one day we will. But now it's time to look at the mysterious creature of the Urals that elicit fear in the rugged indigenous people. In the swampy taiga surrounding the northern and circumpolar Urals, there is something that scares people. Even fearless hunting dogs are afraid of this creature. Faced with it, the Mansi hunters freeze with horror. The off-guard reindeer herders remember encountering this creature. They are called Manx. According to the legends of Mansi mythology, the Manx are ogres and werewolves. The first and unsuccessful attempt of the celestial god Numitarum to create humans. He created Manx from the trunks of large trees. However, after the creation, they fled to the forest, where they live to this day. So this is in itself is very interesting if you look through modern lenses, so to say. This was an attempt to create human beings, and the experiment did not work out. And the results of the experiments fled to the forest. According to the Mansi people, the mink is much more dangerous than the bear. Special bullets are kept to protect against it. Are minks unknown creatures or the fruit of an inflamed human fantasy? There are no real photos of minks. There are only oral stories about them, full of frightening details, from the aborigines of the Urals and from travelers. The indigenous people carve portraits of the minks on trees. They're perceptibly humanoid. The famous Ural city of Perm, local historian Sergei Mikhalevich, has repeatedly found references to them. Viktor Maltsev, a Perm ethnographer who interviewed hundreds of Mansi, shared a curious story. One day a woman from Paul, this Mansi village, at the confluence of the Mali and Bolshoi Toshimok rivers, went to the taiga to pick berries. She took her baby with her. She hung the cradle on a tree. She returned, but someone replaced the child. So local people began to raise that foundling. He matured and became less and less like a human being, turning into a mink. Animal signs were revealed. He preferred raw meat to other food. Daytime drowsiness was replaced by night wakefulness. His eyes burned terribly in the dark. Maltsev retold the legend. And then a shaman came to that Paul, and the mink was burned along with the hut where he lived. Ancient legends say that the mink lived in the Urals before the appearance of the Ugrians. That's the ethnic content of the people who lived in the areas, Obrikurian people. The great tribes of the Menk are the most ancient inhabitants of Siberia. They were very tall, wild-looking, and wore clothes made of skins. Cannibals. They came from the southern Urals, reached the Ob River, and began to move west. Maltsev sums up the mythology. Most often, the presence of mysterious giants was felt in the vicinity of the Chistop mountain range, the Belt Stone, and the Dead Mountain. Rumors about the Menk came from the upper reaches of the Severna Sosva River. There was a rumor about them in the lower Ob region. Reindeer herders from the Ovgorod encountered Menks on the Sinya and Vaikara rivers. Uralic toponyms are full of references to this creature, Menkv-Ur and Menkv-Ya. The most interesting thing is that the stories about them frighten, for some reason, with far from fabulous details, very special details. The anatomical descriptions of the appearance of the Menks, the realism of the plots could have alerted listeners. The stories do not look like nonsense or fairy tale. The area of encounters with Menkv covers a huge territory from the north of western Siberia, the northern Urals, and the lower reaches of the Pechora. Komi, Mansi, Hanti, Nenets people tell about them, according to the Russian ethnographer. It is said that the Menk also roamed the area of Mount Otorten. Dyatlov's group, they were walking towards it and did not reach it. The Dead Mountain, Holat Shahal, on which the group found its death, has a very ominous reputation. According to Mansi from San Klingya Paul, the hell was going on there. A bad place. They thought it was dangerous there. The children were stolen by someone. They stole it right from the Chum hut. And before that, the reindeer herders died. The Chum, probably too, stood there. Someone killed them. The deer graze on their own in the mountains, and the reindeer herders in the camp are found dead and rotten. The dogs were tied up, and they were also dead. Maltsev shared a story that was told by Dmitry Sambindalov. The legendary ethnographer himself was several times on the verge of something inexplicable in his expeditions. So what do the people who they think saw or felt that Menk next to them, what do they feel? It's getting dark. Suddenly, I almost stumble over our dog. Hansi is trembling with his tail and ears tucked in, barely able to stand on his feet. He flinches when I try to stroke him, buries his head under his chest. A branch cracked in the side with a shot. The dog's wet back twitched and the dog whined softly. Miron stopped, his face ashen. From the darkness came the sound of a fallen stone, the crackling of dead wood, and a guttural goo-hru-hru. Maltsev shares his impressions. The ethnographer's companion whispered in horror that the Menk was there. In July of 1982, Viktor Maltsev was pinned down by a thunderstorm. Hiding under a tree, he waited out the bad weather. The Malaya Sosva River rolled its water nearby. A strange thing happened. Suddenly, a man walking on the water appeared. Rather, not walking, but jumping. There was something unusual about the shape of his arms and head. The head was slightly sharp. The hunchback, he rode off down the river. For everything, it took 30 seconds. A feeling of something inhuman. That's what Maltsev wrote in a letter to his friend. The manner of movement of the creature seen by that Permian researcher was similar to that observed by one Mansi, who spent the night in the swamp. The devil fell through in marshy places, getting out, lifted his legs above his head, reached the dry shore, and disappeared into the forest. So that's what ethnographer retold the memoir, so to say, of that Mansi. Strangely, despite the abundance of stories, the traces of the Menk rarely come across people's eyes. But when it happened to stumble upon them from the center of one track to the center of another, a person could not jump even from a running start. To make such a step, you need to have about 2-meter legs, Maltsev noted. Legends about the Menk sow not only fears in the Mansi settlements. People believe that creatures kill, and even today, having twice seen what he took to be the prince of the Menk, Yugo resident Andrei Monin went missing several years ago in the wintertime, and rescuers never found him. Once, according to the indigenous people, the creature even attacked a man with a large club, larch from the tree midlar. The hunter was desperately fighting for his life. Shreds of dark fur were found in his clenched fists. It was in Paknasori. Officially, the murder remains unsolved. They did not inform the authorities about anything. The Mansi were against it. They're sure that the Menk and the bear hear what is being said about them and will avenge it. There is still a lot of fear among the elderly. In the area of the village of Turgur Sospavil, the Menk were rumored to regularly attack Mansi people. So people remembered for a long time how children and women disappeared into the forest. The animal did not touch the men. Such story, the men were not touched by those who kidnapped women and children. Such stories were recorded by researcher Sergei Mikhalevich. But not only people were dying in the forests of the Urals for unknown reasons. According to the testimony of that local historian Mikhalevich, one taiga dweller assured him that he knew how Menk was killed 4 decades ago. He described the corpse of that Menk as a man with bare hair like bears would have. The Mansi believe that Menk regularly remind people of their power, especially those who break the ancient rules. 2 brothers, Pyotr and Miron Bakhtaryov, the Veshera Mansi, somehow whiled the time in their hut. The Paul was in the foothills of Chistop in order not to attract those strange giants, cryptids. The Mansi introduced the rule not to whistle. However, they were listening to a transistor radio which also whistled, made whistling sound. So their house was shaken by a terrible blow, and a strong whistle sounded from the outside. The Mansi sat frozen for a long time, but when they came out, they found nothing. That's what Maltsev wrote back in 1978. Mansi are fearless and persistent hunters, but the fear of the Menk among these people is so great that the Mansi even abandon their huts in the taiga if they feel that the creature has become accustomed to their home. By nightfall, the story goes, we used to hear them whistling from the forest. The dogs were going crazy. Sometimes they bark into the darkness. Then they turn their tail between their legs and hide somewhere, hiding behind us. It was the Menks who wanted to drive us out of there, from the ethnographer's travel diary. Therefore, Mansi, it's not recommended by them to stay in the territories, in the sites, in the zones which are rumored to be inhabited by those Menks. So who are they, the Menk? Unknown creatures, or figment of the human imagination, or maybe an echo of ancient legends? Well, until we see one, have pictures of one or more evidence. It's up to you to decide. But I want to give you comments from the Russians who also read about the Manx, so from different parts of the Russian Federation and the former Soviet Union. So you can have some interesting background. One goes like this: the Dyatlov group died at the hands of the Manx. This is the only hypothesis that explains all the inconsistencies. The Dyatlov group managed to capture Manx in the photo. There is a hypothesis that Dyatlov group perished because of the persecution of this Manx in Mansi. This hypothesis has credence because in the last frame, when the group was walking through the winter forest, there is an image of a creature peeking from behind the tree in the wake of the group as they pass by. Another commentary is like this: our shift workers who explored new deposits in Surgut and Nizhny Vartoks told us that they encountered these creatures. They liked to look in the windows at night at the height of two floors of the building. At the same time, they did not show much aggression, although people went missing. And in Slavic, Finno-Ugric legends, there are numerous references to foreign spirits. Goblins and the Scandinavians have trolls. Okay. Still, how much do the characters of the goblins differ? The Ninets have Ngileka, the Chukchi have Teriki. It's from the same family of creatures, of cryptids for sure. In Bashkiria, in the Buraevsky district, about 70 years ago, local people, their grandfathers encountered similar creatures. The creatures were called albasta. They're covered with silvery and short fur. They live in forests and bushes of the lower banks of rivers. Here's another Russian account. Sometimes we wander around such places. We encountered in Karelia, but not one, but a whole family of cryptids with women and children. They saw us, they held these stones in their hands, but they didn't touch us, even when we got too close to them, literally 3 or 4 meters. We didn't see them at first. Then we only got rid of them when we got 20 or 30 meters away from them. They're very big. The color of the coat is a dark, dense forest shadow, darker and grayer than that of a bear. You won't immediately understand if it's a shadow in the thicket or someone is still there. Here's one from the Urals, one commentary. And after that, I went to the tent at night in the Urals. I didn't expect to encounter him there. I thought it seemed, but no. In the morning, I went to get firewood and found 2 of his beds, literally 100 meters from the tent. I didn't check the place when I set up the camp. There was one, it was getting dark. There was no time. I went to one of the beds. The first impression, it was made humanly cozy. For technical reasons, I had to spend another night there. There was no way to leave. I set up a signal tripwire around the camp at 3:30 at night. It worked. Here's one also very interesting. There are many of them, and they live much closer to people than is commonly thought. You don't need to touch them or look for them. They will find you when they need you. In addition, it's very dangerous. Males are up to 2.8 meters tall. Females are about 2.6 meters tall. Both have shoulders like a good desk. The weight of adults is about 400 to 500 kilograms. Stocky in their own way, by the way, quite beautiful. And the faces, they're 2/3 human. Moreover, they have the type of faces of a modern person, with a high forehead, small brow arches, and not as they're drawn by sofa experts to look like monsters or pithecanthropus. But their noses are wider than ours, and their nostrils are turned slightly upward, and not like people's downwards. The descriptions of them given in given by eyewitnesses largely coincide with what we ourselves saw and heard in the taiga. Let them live. The earth is for everyone, not just for people. They also have their own worries: to find food, to raise children, survive the winter. And you always need to remember, in the forest, in the taiga, in the swamp, we're guests and most often uninvited. And yes, no need to leave the tent at night. Moreover, to go out when you hear a voice of a child crying in the taiga. Believe me, the mommy is there. So this is what I wanted to tell you today about the strange inhabitants of the Ural Mountains, human ones, cryptids, and more, and some of the strange legends. And I'll tell you more stories about the Ural Mountains, of course. Please support my research through the links you'll find in the description to this video. And please tell others about my channel, my videos, and I hope to get more listeners. I enjoy that you hear my videos and you understand about the areas that interest me and parts of the world. And like I said, I'll bring you more. Thank you.